Cool. What's up? Supergood podcast. Yeah. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Andrew Denham.
Correct.
Denham. So I guess Sterling, I mean, you guys introduced me. I'll let you kick that off.
Yeah, we've known each other for a couple of years now. You just moved back from San Diego.
Right.
You've told us a little bit about the move. How's that going?
So far, so good. Half of our life is still in boxes, so just working through that. But excited to be back in the city and be around you guys and see some of our old friends that we haven't hung out with for a while since we moved to San Diego. So far, so good.
Andrew and his wife, Amber, were some of our first homies when Megan and I moved to LA, and then they broke our hearts and moved to San Diego.
We were a little bit of your Sherpas there for a minute, welcoming you to the city, and then we pieced out to San Diego. So it was sad to leave you guys, but happy to be back.
But they're back.
So when I first met you guys lived here?
Yeah. Yep. We were in right at Westwood, Brentwood, kind of right on the edge of there. So just 10 minutes from here.
Got it.
Had to head south to get some rings. Four silver rings.
Absolutely.
In particular.
Oh, shit. That went right over my head. I got it. I thought that was a Braun reference.
It was, but it's also
it was
an Audi
all double entendre thingy. So I guess I don't know where you want to start.
I mean, I think, Andrew, maybe just give us a little background about what your current role is and how you got into the industry.
Sure. So current role is the area sales manager for Los Angeles Metro for Audi of America. So I am a factory rep for Audi corporate as a whole, and I oversee 5 dealerships that are here in the Los Angeles metro area. And I'm somewhat of a consultant. A little bit tough to explain. There's a lot that goes into it, but basically a franchise rep. So all of the dealerships are independently owned and operated organizations, and I'm kind of their key person from the factory that helps them out with anything Audi of America needs. Got into the business back in Detroit, which is where my wife and I are originally from, as all of us are.
Yeah.
Being in the auto industry in that city is pretty common. Although I will say being with a foreign manufacturer coming from Detroit is a little bit uncommon because most people there get into GM, Ford, any of the big 3 manufacturers that everybody works for in the Detroit area. So being around cars was pretty common. And I think going from many of the universities that are in the Metro Detroit area, a lot of first stepping stone jobs just lead you right to auto companies. So that's kind of where I started.
Did you study automotive?
No. College, I was a business major.
Okay.
So always had a kind of a love for Audi. I fell in love with the brand back in 2008, I'd say. And right around the time that I was graduating college, I saw an opportunity on our career services website to start with Audi. And so just put my name in the hat, and that's kind of where it all began.
So you've been with them for 5 years now or something?
And today's the 6th. My 5-year anniversary with the company will be in 5 days on July 11th.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
2013 to now. So.
Oh, yeah. What school did you go to?
I started at Western Michigan University. But wasn't the most scholastic part of my life. I did a little bit more partying there than I did schooling.
How is Western?
It was awesome.
It's like the one school I never spent any time at in college.
I never even visited, yeah.
I really it was some of the most welcoming atmospheres and people that I've ever experienced in my life. I think that was the coolest part about it. And this isn't to say anything against Michigan or Michigan State or Central or any of the other colleges, but we'd go to some of the other ones to see friends that were going there. And it always felt a little bit cliquey or a little bit, you got these people and these people don't like these people and blah, Western was like everybody is there just to meet everybody and hang out and party and have a good time. And so you could go any place, any night, you were welcome. And it was always a good time, which is probably why I didn't do so well in school there. But I was there for about 4 years, and I probably only got about 2.5 years worth of school credits. So then when I moved back to the east side of the state, like Metro Detroit area, worked some odds and ends jobs for a few months and realized, basically just wasted 4 years of my life paying all this money to go to school and didn't get my degree. So I was like, all right, I got to go back and get that done. And thank God I did, because that's when I went to Oakland University, met now she's my wife, but met Amber there. So if I didn't do that, that probably would have never happened. So that's kind of a cool stepping stone, one of those things in life that just happens throughout the course of other things going on. But
what made you choose to, when you decided to go to Oakland?
At that point, I knew that I didn't want to go away to school anymore, because I already had done that. At this point, it was more of kind of a business decision. Just, I need to get this piece of paper that proves to, companies out there that I'm a viable candidate for a job.
Right.
And Oakland University in the Metro Detroit area is probably, outside of Wayne State, is probably one of the best colleges that you can attend. So as far as being able to commute from where I was living, not having to go away to school, that was the right option at the time.
Got
it. Nice.
So after college, so you graduate.
Yep.
And then you went, so how did you find this job? You went on
So it was like the career services website. I had about 6 months left of schooling, like last semester. And I had been working at the Townsend Hotel in Birmingham, Michigan for about 3 years-ish, leading up to that point. A whole bunch of different jobs there. By the end of it, I was managing the valet department team and working with a lot of, getting to drive a lot of nice cars, being in that department. And this woman that stayed there pretty frequently, her name's Jerry Ward. She's actually one of the top executives in Audi of America now. At the time, she was commuting a lot to our satellite office in Auburn Hills, and that she would stay at the Townsend Hotel when she was in town. And I got to know her through that, and she was always driving just the most badass Audis every time she was there. And so I was automatically drawn to speaking to her and seeing the cars that she had and whatever. And I saw a posting on our career services website for working in the CXC, which is the customer communications, customer assistance department of Audi of America. And it's based in Auburn Hills. And that was what she kind of oversaw. And so it was just, again, one of those circumstances of timing of me seeing this, knowing her and being like, hey, Jerry, what is this job about? And she's like, oh, if you want to get started with Audi and you're interested in, furthering your career, this is a great opportunity. You should go for it. So applied for the job through that. And that was kind of the end of her and I's interaction as far as me getting the job. She just kind of, mentioned that it'd be a good way to get my, foot in the door with the company. So yeah, applied from there, went through the process and started in July 2013. And I always kind of say this now, and it's literally probably about as like low on the totem pole as you could be in the company is starting in that department. You're answering calls from customers who are probably about 80% of them upset about their car. Some of them may be interested in buying a car. They just have questions about the products. Some of them may have actually had the car. Like I had a couple instances where the car, effectively saved their life in an accident, and they just wanted to call and tell someone how thankful they were. I'll forever be grateful for starting in that role, because you learn so much about the customers. And sometimes looking back on it today, we get kind of caught up in our everyday business that we really forget about the end goal of our entire company is to, make these customers happy, give them a product they're enjoying, and that their experience is so over the top that they want to come back and get another one down the road. And working in that department really gives you a sense of, from the customer's perspective. Yeah. So started with them in 2013 through that department.
So, 5 years is a fairly significant amount of time, but in terms of sales or a large corporation, you've moved fairly quickly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like the role that you're in, a lot of the other people, you're one of the younger guys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually just started this position about 4 weeks ago, but I did the same job for the last 18 months. It was just in a different market down in San Diego, as you had mentioned. But now the role I'm in is considered like a senior management role. And it's been a fun journey through the company. Kind of, like I said, starting from the bottom.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down.
I wasn't going to say it, but now I got to say it.
Talk about the progression. So after the CSC.
So CXC. So I started there, and again, they have different tiers of departments. So I was at the lowest tier, answering phone calls. Once you are, doing that for 3 or 4 months and you get a good hang on it, they graduate you basically to, tier 3 advocate, which means you can start answering phone calls for people who drive R8s and RS7s and, the top of the line vehicles.
And this is at the dealership?
No, this is at our secondary corporate headquarters in Auburn Hills, Michigan.
Oh, shit. Okay.
So our headquarters is in Herndon, Virginia, which is like the greater Washington, D.C. area. And our secondary headquarters is in Auburn Hills. So that's where I was.
Got it.
Just climbed up the ranks there I was there for about 18 months. And from the beginning till the end, by the time I left there, I was in my 3rd position there. And it was I worked on the executive response team. So when people write letters to the president of Audi of America or to any of the execs, I was on the team who responds to those customers or to follows up with those concerns. So at this point, typically these people are, pretty upset. They've gone through the typical channels of trying to resolve whatever their concern is with the dealership, and then maybe have called into the regular helpline, and their frustration is beyond everyone else's help, and they're like, all right, I have to write a letter to the president or to some top executive about my experience. And so then I would take those in. You're kind of like a middleman. You communicate with the dealership, say, hey, have you worked on this customer's car? What's going on? How can we help insert ourselves into the situation to make them feel whole again and really enjoy their experience? And so that's usually when we, insert some sort of goodwill to try and turn around, their poor experience into a positive customer experience. So I did that for about 6 months, and I was expressing interest. I don't know what it was. I have some family out here in Studio City in Los Angeles that I would come out and visit. My uncle, since I was about 13, I'd come every other year or so, and I always kind of knew I wanted to move to California or the West Coast at some point. So I'd been with the company for, at this time I was probably 25, 26. I'd been with the company for going on like a year and a half, and I had been letting my boss know, like, hey, if anything opens because at this point in time I was a contract employee, for 95% of the people that work in the customer experience center are contract employees. So they're not direct Audi of America employees. They are treated just the same, but overall their payroll, all their benefits, everything goes through a contract house. And so when you're working in those positions, it's kind of like an end goal to get a direct position with Audi of America. Like that's what the aspirations of many of those people are. They're working those jobs to try and kind of be seen and be found and be able to be a direct employee. So I had let my boss know, listen, I want to move to California, really anywhere on the West Coast, and I want a direct role with Audi. If something like this comes up, that's what I'm working towards. So at the time, my boss, I think thought pretty highly of me because they had moved me up within the CXC pretty quick. And so she basically said that, an opportunity to move to the West Coast working in the regional office as the operations specialist or analyst is a great, it's a direct role. It's a good stepping stone to get out into the field and work in different, capacity than the CX, and would be a good opportunity. So we're just kind of waiting for that to open.
How many total roles have you filled within Audi, including the original ones that weren't?
I think this is my 6th. I mean, the ones in the CXC, I kind of look at that now, looking back, as just kind of like one role.
Yeah.
Even though I started as, like I said, as low as you could go, and then I moved. Those are it's still all within the customer experience department. I was still working on customer concerns. It was just at what level am I doing it? So I guess if you boil that just to one for those first 18 months, then it would be one. And then I was the region analyst for another 18 months in the office in Los Angeles here.
Yeah.
Then for the past 18 months, I was the area sales manager for the Pacific Southwest, which covers San Diego, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Honolulu. And so that's the same role that I do now in Los Angeles, but I just got transferred here about a month and a half ago to this one. So that would be technically my 4th or 5th role, whichever way you look at it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
what do you think the reasons are that you were able to move up so quickly versus the next person?
That's a tough question. I think definitely, there's some circumstance of putting yourself out there for sure. I think there's a lot of people that are really smart at what they do, but they kind of stay in their own lane and they aren't willing to step out and let other people know, what their aspirations and what they want to do are. Mm-hmm. And then really going after it, I guess, is, a one way to look at it. I think definitely being a good communicator, I think that's helped me as well. I've never been the most book smart person, but I've always been able to strike up a conversation with anyone, like that. I don't have any problem with public speaking or, interacting human to human is always a good trait of mine. So I think that's helped me along the way as well. Plus, it's kind of cliche, but just hardworking. I think where we come from in the Midwest, especially since I've moved out here to California, not to say anything about, born and raised California people, but there is kind of that, it's 3 p.m., I'm going to beat traffic or I'm going to make it to the beach before the sun goes down mentality. And just having that, 8 to 5 grind mentality that we work hard in the Midwest. And that's kind of what I brought out here. That's helped go a long way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting now because I'm not really familiar with how these large companies and sales roles are shaped, but the stories that Zeke has told me and kind of your journey, it's equally, there's definitely some similarities. Like, it's very interesting. I've never worked for a really large company, but the fact that you can go to your superior and say, like, hey, if something opens up in Southern California, like, let me know. It's a different way to envision your potential future, I guess.
Right. And it's I will say that I've been extremely blessed that it worked out the way that I had hoped it would, because it doesn't always work out that way. But that is always, that kind of a office or company culture. A good way to move up is to always definitely be open with your direct boss as to what you're doing. I know you don't necessarily have to do that. You can apply for other jobs and then let your boss know afterwards that you've gotten it or that you're, going through the interview. But I think the optics on that just always, they're not as good. And you might as well just be honest with the person you're working with. Say, hey, this is something I'm looking forward to doing. If you can help me get there, or if I can lean on you at all to help with your expertise and the people to get me even a seat at the interview table there, then, you might as well leverage that help that you got and just be open about it. Yeah.
It's tough to have that conversation sometimes.
For sure. Absolutely. Especially when, and this is by no means to pat myself on the back, but when you're a strong contributor to the team you're on, sometimes it's tough for that person to be willing to really help let you go, because they know that if once you're gone, then they have to fill that void in their team as to how, they're going to get back to operating at a high level without Andrew once he's, or whoever that person is.
Yeah.
So
I would say to people who feel that way too, I've dealt with the same thing where I've had a boss that was really, an advocate for me and helped me get, far in my career. And when I had another opportunity, I was kind of scared to tell him that I wanted this other position just because I felt like he had done so much for me. So it's tricky. But for anybody who feels that way, like you said, I think it's always better to be in front of it, because what you don't realize is if you're doing the right things, a lot of times those people are going to be a sponsor for you.
For
and
sure.
Those people are going to, you don't need to be scared of them. They get it. Like it's business. And if you're trying to make a step up and you have an opportunity and you've been doing the right things, then they're going to be, they're going to be a help to you. I'm sure maybe there's some bosses out there that try to keep people, but that's not, it's not really somebody that you want to be working for anyways. But I think that's important for sure.
And if anything too, and again, just using my experience, like now the CXC kind of uses me as like a success story to tell all of their employees there, like, hey, look at this, you're starting at, it's a decent job, but you're starting low on the totem pole. But look what we've done through this department. We've got Andrew, who is now managing the biggest market in the country as an area sales manager, and he was here 5 years ago. So there is possibility for you to do this right now for 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, whatever it is, shine, rise to the top and show what you can do. And this is proof that, there's opportunity to grow within the organization, and you can start right here. So it's other thing that I would add too is that, for most of those managers that are able to do that, it's almost like something that they can also then put on their resume. Like, look, hey, I've managed people. I've done a good job of promoting growth through the organization. And here's another example of that. So,
right.
How have you been able to, I'm just trying to further dig into this to help people who are, it's always good to hear success stories, but it's when you're in that position and you're facing a challenge or a difficult superior or anything like that, it's always like feels a little more intimidating. And I guess when you are in a role like that, where let's say you've spent a good amount of time there and you're very confident that you're willing to do the next role or the next role after that. And like, you have this very high aspiration for yourself, but you're also, trying to show that you're humble and that you're hardworking. And like, how do you strike that balance of, because it's almost like what I've noticed when I first moved, I think my ability to move out of a period of time that some people get stuck in for like 4 years, I was able to do in a few months.
Right.
And I think it was that mentality of like, I am going to enjoy this no matter how bad, how much it would quote unquote suck to the average person. Like I'm going to take everything that would suck and like enjoy it. And sounds weird to say, but like when your back's up against a wall or you really commit to like, this is necessary for me to get to the next step, it gets a little bit easier, at least in my experience.
Sure.
But like, it becomes more challenging as you start to see how the industry is shaped around you. Like, does that make sense? How do you strike
absolutely.
that balance?
I think there's a lot of that actually working in the CXC. And again, it's nothing to put down that department or working in that department, but imagine you go to work for 8 hours a day and a vast majority of your day is listening to people on the phone who are upset. It's not something that you wake up and drink your morning coffee and you're like, man, I can't wait to go hear people's, worst story of their life today. Like, it's just, it's not. So there is definitely that grind of like, okay, how am I going to get through this? And how is there a bigger picture here that I'm going to, subscribe to for now, just knowing that this is a stepping stone along the way. And I think for me, the biggest thing that kept me in it was just my drive for the brand. I loved the products. I loved Audi. I loved what the company stands for. They treat us, even in that department where you're not a full branded employee, as we refer to it as, you're still treated really well. They have a lot of perks, a lot of make you feel appreciated to be there. And I definitely had times where I was like, okay, if something doesn't work out in the next 2 months, I got to find something else to do, because this is it's stressing me out a lot, and there's a lot of basically you'd leave there feeling beat up some days, just because you'd been on the phone with some pretty pissed off people for hours on end. But yeah, I think the support from your management team around you, and just having that mentality that what I'm doing is having, even though it may not be what I want to do for my life, this is just a stepping stone along the way. And what I'm doing is actually having an impact on people and their experience with the brand every day. So just keeping in perspective, what's important for what you're doing now, and that if you continue to drive, that you might have an opportunity to do something else, as long as you're not losing that drive. Because I think that's what I would see a lot in that department is, you almost get like the lifers, the people that are just there to work that job, and they're not really trying to go above and beyond. And it may be that at one point they had that drive, but they kind of lost it. And so they're just kind of stuck, and they'll probably be there until something either falls in their lap or until they leave. Because there's definitely a fair amount of people in the department that are there. But
So, couple of things there that I wrote down. I think kind of the moral of that story is like, always think of the bigger picture, keeping that in the back of your mind always. And I think that will help with the drive or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, I was I worked at a dealership for a while, and I'm in corporate America. So you definitely have those moments where you're like, fuck, this blows. But ultimately, like Sterling said, if you're in a situation that you don't necessarily want to be in, but you still just, buy into it and give it everything you can be successful. It doesn't matter what the position is. It doesn't matter what you're doing, if you like it or not. If you truly buy in, you can be successful. And ultimately, thinking about the bigger picture will get you there, whether it's in the current company you're in or another company. And especially for corporate America, it's all about your resume, and it's all about the time that you put in. But, I think the people that can, constantly think bigger picture, I think get ahead faster. Rather than, kind of just, this kind of sucks, I'm going to half-ass it so I can go home and, crack a beer at 5 o'clock or whatever. Because like you said, being on the phones and being in a car dealership and cold calling people and being in sales in general, it's not always the most comfortable thing, and it's not, the most fun thing to do. But ultimately, if you just grind and do it, you said that you're kind of blessed how it worked out. I kind of believe that everybody puts themselves in a situation, whether direct or not. So when you say the word blessed, I look at all of those hours that you put in doing the CXC stuff and really grinding and trying to do your best at it. That, at the time, that wasn't the end game, but it ultimately got you to be blessed how it worked out, because you put yourself in that situation. There's maybe some luck involved or whatever, but ultimately everything that you did prior put yourself in that situation. So I think for people who are struggling in a position now, just remember, whether it's with that company or not, everything you're doing now is going to have some type of effect in the future on what you do. And the harder you work now, the better you're going to have that lucky moment. You're going to have that break because you did everything right to eventually get yourself in that situation. I think people who are like, they're always getting dealt the short straw or this, or it doesn't work, or they're complaining, blah, blah, blah. Some of that could be true for sure. But a lot of that is the fact that that's where your mindset's at.
100%. And I actually, as you just said that, when I was kind of referring to those, those lifers in the CXC, that's what happens. They get bogged down with all the negative attitudes and this just, nobody deals well with change, especially in corporate America, but we'll have a change in management there, and all of a sudden people are all upset about it, or they'll have a change in how their PTO is used, or a change, these little hiccups that people allow for them to, ruin their day or the mentality of their moment, with the brand. And it can kind of soil their experience, and all of a sudden they don't have that same drive anymore. And that was for sure, looking back on my experience in that department, you can't let that stuff bog you down. You have to go into it just continuing to work hard every day and put a smile on your face, even if it's a day that you're not feeling like it's going so well. Because perception is huge. The people around you, I think for me, that's been like one of my biggest, and I should have probably brought this up earlier, but the way that you are perceived by your superiors and the coworkers around you is huge. And if they see you as a positive person or as somebody who has a really strong drive to continue to work hard, or it's okay to joke around and be fun at the office and stuff too. But for me to get the role that I got today, I also had to be perceived as professional and someone who has the ability to sit in front of these executives and general managers within, the dealerships and have a serious conversation and be, someone that could be dependable and, handle those types of scenarios. And if you're not, putting those vibes out there that you are, able to handle those types of situations, then people's perception of you are never going to allow you to drive to get those types of roles, because they're like, oh, he's not ready for that, or, oh, he, may not be mature enough to do those types of things. So I think that's huge.
We had on a friend of mine who's a producer, a commercial like photo shoot producer, a couple last week, and he was talking about how, he was talking about how it, like he would just act like his boss. Mm-hmm. I mean, and not necessarily, but like he also would start like doing their job mm-hmm. in a way. And then my follow up to ask him was like, isn't that, not appropriate to an extent? And he was like, well, yeah, you have to be mindful about it, but it's okay to, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to remember exactly what Matthias said, but it was something about like having that mentality of the role above you, like mm-hmm. put yourself mentally in that position or even the next one above that. And like things are going to start happening. Like,
sure. They always say, what do they say? Dress for the job you want, not the job you have. It's kind of you can have that mindset mentality as well. It's, I kind of knew from once I had an idea of what different roles were within the organization and what different jobs did, that I wanted to be an area sales manager, or an ASM as we refer to it short. And so then everything I did within the company was trying to drive me to get that job. And so trying to kind of mimic my actions and my mentality and my demeanor that I brought to my everyday was just around the people that I knew that had that job. So absolutely validating what you're talking about right there is just,
Do you have any specific examples of like, it's important, especially in a communication-based industry, you have to be, very approachable and mm-hmm. like, positive, and the ability to have those conversations, but like how do you still come across that way but then professional, you know what I mean? Like, is it really just a lack of hard work and people goofing off? Like what are those actual things that you would tell yourself or make sure that you're doing to set yourself apart?
Right. I think something that I was always really good at, had the CXC. Second role was with the company. The one that moved me to California was in the operations specialist role. And that was, you're kind of a jack of all trades working in our regional office here in LA. It's a small office. There's only about 12 people that work there, but they're all department heads of their respective jobs. So we've got the director of marketing, the director of after sales, the director of network development, the director of customer experience. You've got all these big wigs per se in that, and my job is kind of to support all of them. So to answer your question, in that role specifically, that's kind of what I'm thinking of I had to do a great job of learning from all of these guys and kind of figuring out, actually my wife and I were talking about this just yesterday, of what made me successful in that role is being able to adapt and understand what those people needed before they needed it. And kind of tailoring everything I did into how can I be one step ahead of what it is they're going to ask me next, so that I'm prepared and ready to do whatever it is when they're going to ask me to do it. And it could be that I get something done that they never even have to ask me about, because I'm already looking to the future, thinking ahead of what they need next. And really, when you're working in a support role like that, where the people around you are all depending on you to do their job, you have to bring that positive mentality and drive to work, because if they're going about their day and there's something that they needed that didn't happen, and, oh, Andrew, I don't want to approach him today, he's kind of in a shit mood over there, he's not, being a team contributor, you can kind of have a ripple effect on everybody else's, experience that day or how productive they're going to be. So, not sure if I really answered your question there, but basically, when I think about that, that's the role I think that I probably would reflect back
I think
on.
it makes sense.
So I want to go back to something that you said that I think is probably one of the most crucial things that I've learned since I've been in my company and just in corporate. I think you said people are uncomfortable with change.
Oh, yeah.
And this might be one of the biggest pieces of advice I'd give to anybody in corporate America is accept change.
Absolutely.
Accept it, because it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Managers are going to leave. VPs are going to leave. Presidents are going to leave. Companies are going to reorg. People are going to get let go. But once you accept change and accept that the current role that you're doing now may switch up, and if you buy into that, ultimately that's what's going to get you further ahead. Because when I look at change, especially for a young professional in corporate America, is change means opportunity for me. So I think that's huge, because I know some people in different companies and they get upset when this happens, and that wasn't the role they signed up for, and that's not their job. Mm-hmm. Well, unfortunately it is your job now, and there's two things you can do. You can, be in a shitty mood and bring bad energy to what you're doing and not be happy, right. Or you can accept it and try to do the best at it that you can. So I think that's really important for sure. And then another thing you said, perception. Perception is key. Like you said, how people view you. And so I wrote this question down, and I don't know how to answer it, so I want to ask you guys. I think my success, the little bit of success that I've had, is a lot due to my personality, just in general. I've always been, a talker. I've always been in some form of sales. It's been easy for me to talk to people, and I think it has for you, and it seems like it has for you as well. So that's our personality. I think that's what a lot of salespeople or people who are in front of people have. So how do you work on your personality if you don't have that? Because we all know a lot of people who just are not very people person, or they get shy around people, or they're not comfortable in that scenario and talking in front of people. But they might want to do something like this. They might want to be in sales. Like, right. What can you do to actually work on your personality?
I think, and again, this might be like a cliche answer, but when you really grow as like a human is when you force yourself into those situations that you may not be that comfortable in. And the more you can do that, the more you'll learn, and the more you will get better at doing those types of things. So if you're a shy person and you know that about yourself, and you're getting off work and you're just going straight home, or you're not the person that, trying to interact with other people at work, you're never going to really step out of that. If you are making, a mental note that like, hey, today I'm going to really try and step out of the box and force myself into more conversations and really put myself out there. I think that you'll eventually the people that fall into those ruts of being, extremely shy, or maybe not thinking they have the skills to have those communications or conversations with people, it may have fallen into that and then really can't get out of it. And it's, again, and I think of myself, things in my career that I've grown has been in situations where I stepped into things that I knew nothing about and really had to learn on the run. And I've developed my career a lot more around those opportunities than things that I stepped into that I felt really comfortable about. Because anyone can go out and do stuff they know how to do, or, be the person that they know they've been for years. But when you go and force yourself into uncomfortable situations or things that you may not be the subject matter expert on or things that you may not be the most knowledgeable about, that's where you're really going to, experience the most growth, I think.
That's so huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you actually said it earlier because I wrote it down, but just putting yourself out there. So, you answered it, really putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And then, you're going to shoot your shot. Sometimes, it's not going to,
you got to accept failure too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'd say piggybacking that with also like educating yourself as much as you can on the fly. So when you get thrown into a new market and it's like, the products, how the company is shaped, you know how to work with these people. Those are all things you had to learn,
right?
Maybe in uncomfortable situations as well. But when you're put in a new market and you maybe don't know the details or all of the actual people filling the roles at these different industry dealerships, like the quicker that you inherently, that's going to bring some uncomfortability.
Absolutely.
But the quicker that you get yourself aligned and maybe do the next, do a little bit more than the person who was before you or somebody else in that role of like getting yourself really acquainted on a one-to-one basis with a lot of these people in support roles or like whatever that may be, like educating yourself, at least that's, I think, in a weird way answers the question you asked as well about personality. When you put yourself in a position to succeed, you're going to bring confidence and you're going to act more confident. You're going to be more personable. And I have found that like in my career, it's very important in times of trouble and challenge and like inner questioning that you stick to your North Stars and like believe in yourself. But when the ball starts rolling and you start moving, you're like, okay, well, I guess, I do know some of this shit. And then like the more you set yourself apart and like when you make mistakes, when you put yourself out there, learn from them and then use that to your advantage. And it seems like it's kind of a ripple effect on the other side of things. It's a positive reinforcement with the education. For
sure. And Zeke mentioned this earlier about, people, what do they say? People are inherently resistant to change. And I think the being accepting to change, as Zeke pointed out, is just such a, I can think back on the 5 years that I've been with the company and experienced definitely positive changes and negative changes. And some of those negative changes really throw people for a loop. And all the years I did in undergrad, a lot of it probably doesn't really translate to the job I do today. But I specifically remember taking, in some of my supply chain courses, learning about change management and about how you handle change and how you, adapt in a organization when changes happen, because there's some people that don't do well with that. And if you take whatever change it is, you probably have no control over it. It may have happened at a higher level, but spin it for the positive. And even if it's not the most, progressive thing for what you're doing, just keep focused on your task at hand and move forward. Don't let things like that bog you down.
I would say, I'm just thinking of this as we're talking, with change, you're going to have people at your company who are not going to be happy, and they're going to bring a negative energy, and they're going to try to talk to other people and tell other people how shitty the company is and
bandwagoning
and how bad they're doing. What I would say to you is, hear the rumblings and internalize it for yourself, but don't be a part of it. Is what I found. I always try to stay, I listen, don't be naive, because sometimes shit's going down and it's important to know. You want to stay ahead of the curve, but be smart about it, because you don't want to get caught up with the rest of the crew when they find out that everyone was talking shit or this and that. And you can tell that energy. My thing is, when people are doing that, then I want to be the opposite. I want to be the one to say, it's not that bad, guys. Like, this is an opportunity. Even if it sucks for me too, I know just that perception, and always going back to that perception of keeping a positive energy about any situation is going to help the people around you But I would say, don't be a part of it. Try to stay away from it as much as you can, because it's not going to help you.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. If anything, you just kind of touched on it. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to kind of set yourself apart and drive positive attitude towards that situation. If you have a group of people who are, bashing on something or talking shit about the company or doing, this or that about the other person, then that's an opportunity to step in and say, hey guys, this may not be the most favorable, but listen, if we do this and we continue on this path and we do these changes this way, it's not going to be that bad for us. Or really, standing apart from all of those people that may be kind of naysayers of the change or whatever it is that's going on. That should be your aha moment, hey, maybe this is my chance to really drive a different mentality into this situation.
Because optimism and positivity can be equally or more contagious as negativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. Listen, there's been times where I'm like, this does suck.
Yeah.
But I know, just knowing that, not bringing that vibe to it, around people around me, bringing that other energy to it, really just has an effect on not only yourself, but everybody, as far as just mentally and kind of being able to work through that stuff. So I just wanted to say that to people. So I don't know how to, I'm trying to formulate this, but so corporate America, politics. So I guess when we're talking about this right now, I feel like politics and perception are kind of hand in hand, I guess. Mm-hmm. Because I know people at company that'll be like, oh, well, you only got this because this. You only got this because they like you, or the boss liked you. Well, why do you think the boss liked me? One, obviously, work ethic, but two, the perception that I give out. For an example, I would wear a suit. And at first we had to, but even when we didn't have to anymore, when I was in the sales academy at Honeywell, I still would wear one. Mm-hmm. And when some people slowly would kind of stop wearing them, I would still do it. Now, not all the time, but more than other people, because I just knew that perception, when executives walked past me or they would see me, they would look at me and be like, that guy's sharp. And one time I actually saw the president of our company and at this expo in New York, and he looked at me and he said, you know what, you always dress really sharp. And that was one of the only conversations I ever had with him. But it's just that alone, that,
he remembered
that mindset.
Though.
He remembered me for something like that.
That was the first?
One of the first conversations that I ever had with him. And was that, and yeah, because in corporate, you barely see these guys or whatever.
But for him, you've done enough that you've established some sort of low-key rapport where this guy knows you by name, and to this day. And
I did nothing, well now, yeah, it's different now. But at that point, I did nothing different than... All I did different was dress a little bit nicer more often than not. Mm-hmm. And he remembered me from that, and he still remembers me, and it's grown into a different relationship now, which is cool. But yeah, I don't know what the point of that was. But
perception, setting yourself apart.
Yeah. And it's the littlest things. It's like if you go out and if you're a guy, I always sometimes I get shit for wearing suits and blazers out when I go out on Friday or Saturday nights. But my thing is why the fuck would I not? Mm-hmm. Girls like guys that can be put together.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's why would you not try to give yourself the best odds?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of, but you can take that philosophy, to anything in your job or whatever. So. Well, shit. Okay. So let's fast forward real fast past all that real quick.
Yep.
You move out to LA.
Yep.
You've been out here for?
It was December of 2014, so it'll be 4 years and a couple months here.
Nice. And so when you got out here, you were in LA how long before you went to San Diego?
It was December of 14 to September of 16, so 18 months, 19 months, something like that. About a year and a half. Lived in a couple different places, worked up in the valley in Woodland Hills, and that was in that support role as an operations specialist. Amazing time in my career. I probably learned more from that job than any other job I've ever learned from. Got to interface with all the top players out in the Western region here, and that's what really set me up to be able to get my area sales manager role that I'd kind of aspired to get one day when I started with the company, was really just surrounding myself by, with all of those people that were the department managers and kind of proving myself to all of them, working my tail off, learning as much as I could from all of their expertise, because they're kind of, they're at the tops of their departments for all of their respective, skill sets. And that was just an amazing experience overall for me. And really stepping out of my kind of bubble that I'd lived in for 26 years in Michigan, and moving to the West Coast. And I'll never forget this. All my friends or people that I would talk to around it, not everyone, a lot of people were super excited and said they would do it for themselves too. But I'd always get this question like, aren't you, afraid that you're moving away from everything or away, outside of, your group of friends or all of this, and you don't really know people there, you don't know where you're going. And my constant response would be no, like that actually is the most exciting part of this whole thing to me is like, I think people get really trapped in, again, their bubble where they're at. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm not putting that down whatsoever. And I where I came from is a great place to be, but the amount of experience that I have learned from and the people that I've interacted with, the situations that I've been in over the past 4 years since I've moved to California would have never happened if I didn't take that step out of my comfort zone from where I was to where I am now. There's no way I would have been, be here today. And I still have a lot of career left ahead of me. I'm not saying I've reached the pinnacle of my, successes. And I'm really, it's even weird for me to say that I'm successful, but just to be where I am today would never have happened if I didn't take that step to come out here.
Yeah. I mean, it's equally important to make sure that you're always realigning yourself with what's important and where you're heading. And that's something that we talk about a lot because we're bringing in all these people that are in the grind and trying to give them an opportunity to understand some of the good practices that they've put into place. But it's tough when you're in it to really appreciate or give yourself the credit from what you've done. So I hope you do that.
Absolutely. It's, thinking back on it now, again, like really starting from the bottom to being where I'm at today, it's been an awesome journey. And my wife and I talk about this all the time, but we just think about, we'll look at the last 4 weeks of our lives or the last 6 weeks, the last 8 weeks, and we're like, man, we have done so much stuff. We've interacted with so many different people. We've been in so many cool situations that we just would never have been in if we didn't take that, that big leap to come out to California. And it doesn't even, if there's anything talking from like an advice standpoint to anyone out here that would want to take that step to do something, I would fully encourage it. I mean, whether it's California or, moving to any big city or anything that's outside of your comfort zone, I think you're going to grow a ton from that. Even just learning more about myself over the first 3 to 6 months of kind of removing myself from that bubble that I knew my whole life for 25 years. I can't even speak to the volumes of positive things that did for me.
Yeah, not only, maybe the biggest thing about getting out of your bubble is, if you have an opportunity, like just for your life, man, like the more you can see it, it's known. Like people who travel the world, and the more that you get to see and the better understanding you can have of different type of people in different cities and different vibes. And like, it's just going to help you overall be a better person.
Well, and the something I was just kind of touching upon, the people that you're going to come across or that you're going to interact with, you would have never run into those people if you just stayed in your own lane, back in, you didn't get out and see the world and do these different things. You're forcing yourself again into those situations where you have opportunities to meet and grow from other people that you would not have met otherwise had you just, kind of continued on doing what you're doing where you're from. And there's nothing wrong with that. I know people that I'm friends with or family members that will they'll be in Metro Detroit for their whole lives and they'll never leave. And there's nothing, I love that area. I'm not speaking down against anyone who thinks that that's for them or not for them moving out. But I just would be really an advocate for, even if it's just for a couple of years, just to step out of your comfort zone and go try something else. There's so much world to see out there and to live that I think you'd be, doing yourself an injustice to never go out and give it a shot.
Right. I mean, even to the level of, like you said, there's nothing wrong with being at home and having a family and or whatever you want to do. But I mean, take trips, even, try to get out of the country, try to go to different cities, because it's the same concept, whether you're in a place for a long time or for a short amount of time, it's all about experience, I think. So
absolutely.
Well, I have like a million more things I wanted to dive into, but I think this is going to have to be part one of this conversation. But Sterling, I think that you should probably shoot some of these rapid fires.
So we just have a few rapid fire questions. Like,
okay.
It can be one word, it can be one sentence, whatever. Most important habit for a creator or an entrepreneur or a person in business.
Most important habit, got to have some sort of schedule or routine. Got to know what your day is going to look like, plan your day in your head, know what it is ahead of you that you're going to get accomplished for that day, and then see it through.
Perfect. What are your biggest influences?
For sure the people around me, my coworkers, my wife, the friends that I surround myself with, and I've been blessed to really encounter. Those are the people that made me who I am. And
that's a great answer.
Yeah.
He's usually like Beyonce.
That was once. Okay. Shout out Joe. What up, Joe?
What the most rewarding experience in your work thus far? Anything come to mind?
Again, and it's kind of piggybacking off the last answer, but the people that I work with, the people that I'm surrounded with on my team are some of the brightest, and it's almost like a family away from my family. It's really helped, especially living on the West Coast here, away from my family. It's like a secondary family that I've always felt really comfortable and welcome with, and they've definitely helped me be successful in this role.
Amazing.
I need to ask one question off the last question. Like, what's the best perk of your job? I mean, you work for
the cars,
Audi.
man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So are you driving an Audi?
I am. That's definitely one of the best parts of the job. We get a new car like every 3 to 6 months. My wife actually works for the company as well, which if we do a part 2, we can get into that sometime. But she manages a fleet of marketing cars that we have out here in the West. So we get all the fun toys at our disposal.
He's driving an old beater, early 90s.
I mean, I think next time, I guess I would just say I want to get into, and maybe this is good for us, but just maybe like pros and cons and like perks of the job. But like ultimately, I want people to like, the automotive industry is pretty dope if you find your lane, and there's a lot of perks to your job.
Absolutely.
You get to travel, you get to do all types of things. So I want people to know those things because I want them to go out and try to get a job.
And try to get it's kind of the unspoken part of it, right? Because you're like, those are all the fringe benefits that I don't go to work every day to get those things, but they're really cool parts of my job that make me happy to continue to work for the company and make me, feel good about what I'm contributing to the brand and what they're giving back to me as an employee. Because the travel is awesome. The ability to see different parts of the world, stay in these nice hotels, drive the nice cars. We get to go to cool Audi sponsored events that, especially living here in Southern California, there's tons of stuff with, the film industry and Hollywood and movie premieres and all that stuff is definitely a badass part of working for the brand.
Dope. Okay, we just needed to get that out there for those people.
Cool. All right. That's a wrap.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right.